Hello, now I am back with third lecture. I hope that you have well grasped with the first two lectures all about Pakistan Zindabad. That is first chapter of our textbook, and now we have come down to the second chapter of our textbook, which is Birkenhead drill. Birkenhead drill वो चैप्टर है इस साल जो सबसे ज्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट है। उसकी वजह यह है कि नो क्वेश्चन appeared last year from this chapter. So this year there are chances that a question would come from this chapter, and this is not a lesson itself, it's a training, I would call it. A great example of discipline and humanity presented in this lesson. And अगर आपने टाइटैनिक देखी है तो much part of Titanic resembles to Birkenhead drill except जैक एंड कैट विंसलेट। अच्छा, ब्रिकनहेड जो है वो शिप का नाम है। ड्रिल का मतलब होता है एक्सरसाइज। ये चैप्टर एक्सट्रैक्ट किया गया है, एक बुक है अशोक रीडर्स थर्ड, वहां से ये लिया गया है। इस चैप्टर के अंदर होता ये है कि द ट्रूप शिप नेम्ड Birkenhead originated from England off to South Africa, carrying 630 passengers, mostly young soldiers and their families. When it was 64 kilometers away from Cape Town at 2 o'clock in the morning, it hit against a giant hidden rock twice and split into two parts. Front part sank into the water right after it struck with the giant rock, but luckily no passenger was drawn. All the passengers who were at front part, they managed to come to rear part of Birkenhead. इस तरह से तो ये स्प्लिट हो गया, डिस्ट्रॉय हो गया। अब रियर पार्ट बचा था। इस ट्रूप शिप के अंदर जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि 630 पैसेंजर्स थे, जिसमें मोस्टली यंग सोल्जर्स थे, उनकी फैमिलीज थी, बच्चे थे। जब ये स्प्लिट हुआ तो जैसा कि शिप में लाइफ बोट्स होती हैं, इसमें भी थी बिर्किनहेड के अंदर। जितनी भी लाइफ बोट्स थी वो तमाम डिस्ट्रॉय हो गई एक्सेप्ट 3 लाइफ बोट्स। अब ईच लाइफ बोट could accommodate only 60 passengers. Thus, 180 passengers could be saved, while rest of them would be at the mercy of big ocean. Meanwhile, the commander of the ship passed the order, women and children first. All the soldiers, rather young soldiers, stood straight. They took out 3 useful lifeboats, lowered them down to the water, managed to accommodate all the children and women, which were 170 in numbers, while accommodation was for 180 passengers. So 10 male members were also accommodated to complete the numbers. And then these boats carrying 180 passengers sailed away. Now the rear part starts sinking slowly, but there was no panic among the soldiers. All the soldiers drawn into the water. Few of them knew how to swim, so they struggled on the surface of the water. One of the commanders, who took support of a wreckage on the surface of the water, at the same time he saw 2 of his young soldiers struggling into the water, so he pushed that piece of wreckage towards these young soldiers so that they would hold on to this piece of wreckage and survived. When both of the soldiers and the commanders held on to this piece of wreckage, the commander realized that this piece of destroyed Birkenhead was not strong enough to hold on to the weight of all 3 soldiers. So finally he let go of his hold, drawn himself, sacrificing and surviving 2 of his young soldiers. Meanwhile, a rescue ship came and it survived 14 soldiers, while rest of them gone forever. Now, the first question. I have already given you a brief summary and things would have come back to your mind what you learned in the class. The first important question of this lesson is, how did Birkenhead came to be wrecked? Was any crew member to be blamed? Do you remember in the second chapter you experienced two-part question, and here you are yet again experiencing the same two-part question. And such two-part questions, keep coming your examination. So when such type of questions appear in your examination, so you are going to give answer of both of the questions one after another. पहला पार्ट क्या कहता है कि किस तरह से वो डिस्ट्रॉय हुआ. द शिप कोलाइडेड विद अ रॉक हिडन अंडर द सी. एक बहुत बड़ी जाइंट रॉक थी जिससे वो टकराया और it split into two parts. Yes, you have given the answer of the first part of this question. Now let's come down to the second part of this question, which asks, was any crew member to be blamed? Of course not. बिल्कुल नहीं, क्योंकि all the young soldiers were quite disciplined. They obeyed the order of their commanders in letter and spirit. So we cannot blame any crew member for the destruction of Birkenhead. So these are three main points. If you cover these 3 points into sentences, that would turn into a paragraph, and that would be the answer of this question. Now let's move on to the second question. Read the second question. What would probably have happened had there been a panic on Birkenhead? You remember, this is the question which you have practiced so many times. The reason is conditional sentence. Yes, this is third conditional sentence, which you practiced a lot. And in the beginning, before I taught you second conditionals, I did ask you to memorize the answer of this question as it is. And it became easier for understand when I taught you the third conditional. You remember this? Here we go with the key points, how you are going to answer this question. There was a probability of great loss in that case. सबसे पहले तो हमें इस क्वेश्चन को समझना है कि क्या रहा है. What would probably have happened? क्या होता गालिबन had there been a panic on the Birkenhead? अगर Birkenhead में कोई खौफ होता. तो पहला की पॉइंट इसका ये है, there was a probability of great loss in that case. अगर पैनिक होता तो बहुत बड़ा लॉस हो जाता. पैनिक would have resulted in the following. यानी कि अब उस पैनिक से होता क्या, वहां पर जो पैसेंजर्स थे वो एक दूसरे को धक्का देते, वहां पर फियर क्रिएट होता और हर कोई ये चाहता कि वो बोट के अंदर जो है वो अपनी जगह बना ले. और बोट में तो एक खास कैपेसिटी थी. ईच बोट कुड कैरी 60 पैसेंजर्स ओनली. When everybody wanted to be accommodated in the boat, of course the boat would be overweight and all the passengers would die. Now here comes the third question. What was the heroic action in the Birkenhead? A short while back I've just let you know a brief summary of Birkenhead drill, and in the end I told you that heroism. Just stress your mind. You are going to come up with the answer. Yes, it happened when the rear part sank into the water. Yes, जब जहाज का पिछला हिस्सा समंदर में गिरा तो तमाम जितने भी पैसेंजर्स थे वो पानी में डूब गए. उनमें से कुछ ऐसे थे जिनको तैरना आता था, तो वो अपना हाथ पैर मारकर they managed to keep themselves on the surface of the water. Among them was a commander of the ship too. Commander of the ship held on to a piece of wreckage. जहाज का एक तबाहशुदा टुकड़ा जो है उसने उसको पकड़ा हुआ था ताकि जब तक रेस्क्यू शिप आए तो वो जो है उस जिंदा रहे। इसी दौरान उसने he noticed two of his young soldiers struggling into the water and about to drown. He pushed that piece of wreckage towards these young soldiers. अब वो दो यंग सोल्जर्स और वो जो कमांडर है उन तीनों ने उस पीस ऑफ रैकेज को पकड़ लिया। थोड़ी देर के बाद कमांडर ने ये महसूस किया कि ये जो पीस ऑफ रैकेज है ये इतना ज्यादा मजबूत नहीं है कि ये तीनों को थाम सके। अगर तीनों ही उसको पकड़े रहे तो तीनों ही पानी में डूब जाएंगे। सो फाइनली ही लेट गो ऑफ हिज होल्ड। उसने पीस ऑफ रैकेज को छोड़ दिया। ही drowned himself into the water, sacrificed his life in order to survive two of his young soldiers. What a heroism. You must have seen so many movies in which such scenes, actually picturized. तो यहां से हमें, जैसे कि मैंने शुरू में कहा कि ये सिर्फ एक लेसन नहीं है, इस चैप्टर से लेसन लेना भी है। जिंदगी वही होती है जो हम दूसरों के लिए जीते हैं, अपने से कमजोर लोगों के लिए जीते हैं, उनकी मदद करते हैं, अपनी लाइफ देकर, अपनी जिंदगी देकर। और दुनिया के हर शोबे में अगर डिसिप्लिन नहीं है तो उसमें कामयाबी के चांसेस भी नहीं होते। तो इन द एंड द ऑर्डर ऑफ द डे is women and children first so that they would have a chance to live. यहाँ ये 3 क्वेश्चंस हमारे कवर होते हैं और ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस हैं। मैं फिर कह रहा हूं आपसे कि ये ब्रिकन हेड ड्रिल जो आपका चैप्टर है, इसमें से कोई सवाल पिछले साल नहीं आया, तो इस साल बहुत मुमकिन है कि इसमें से कोई एक सवाल आए। तो इस चैप्टर को बहुत इन्हेमात के साथ, बहुत अटेंशन के साथ आप इसको पढ़ें, इसके पॉइंट्स अपने जहन में रखें, so that you would be able to answer the question if appears in your upcoming board examination. So that ends lecture number 3, and pretty soon I'm going to reappear with your 4th English lecture. Until then, बहुत सा ख्याल रखना अपना भी and the people around you. Bye bye.